The Republican National Convention is underway in Cleveland, Ohio, bringing many of the party's most spirited voices, pushing their agenda forward. Lenny McAllister, Republican strategist and current candidate for U.S. House of Representatives in Pennsylvania, gives a preview of what many can expect from the week's events.
I think on the ground there's going to be a divergence of two worlds. I think that what you'll end up seeing is a lot of people being very much for Mr. Trump, very much for Republicans, and being very much anti-Hillary Clinton, and that's going to be the three prongs of that rhetoric coming from there. But at the same time, especially with the tragedies that we've seen throughout July, both internationally and within our borders here in the United States, you'll see a lot of tension. A lot of people that feel that Trump and many Republicans are responsible for the rhetoric that is dividing our country. It's going to be very important to see what leaders in Cleveland are capable of uniting and bringing a uniting message during the 4 days in Cleveland, so that as the party moves forward, there's an opportunity to get the swing vote, to get the independent vote, and to win elections and then lead moving forward from there.
He says the most recent tragedy in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where at least 3 officers were killed in an apparent ambush Sunday, is not only a travesty, but more needs to be done to bridge the gap between authorities and the community.
We have to get to a point of time where we bring down the rhetoric, we bring down the tensions, and we build up the bridges necessary to get communities working together, trusting each other, bringing back the peace, and bringing back a sense of patriotic respect with the police, with communities of color, with people in government, etc.
During our conversation, McAllister touched on the role Black Republicans play in the political spectrum, as not only the base is on shaky ground, but that African Americans overwhelmingly vote Democratic.
And what we need to do is we need to take 21st century conservative values and allow them to fit into the problem-solving mechanisms for 21st century Americans, including today's African Americans. We can't talk about history from Abe Lincoln 150 years ago. We can't just talk about Jim Crow from 60, 70 years ago. That is historically accurate, yet at the same exact time may not be relevant to the 25-year-old mother that's trying to find a way to grow from a part-time job to having a full-time career. It may not apply to the African-American family of 5 that's trying to figure out a way to pay for their children's college or trying to get to that next step in home ownership. These are the things that we as Black Republicans have to bring to the table with a set of policies and procedures, with a perspective that makes sense for the African American voter. Even when you look at, again, this dynamic between the police and African Americans, we can talk about the Constitution and the Second Amendment as much as we want, or we can talk about the Constitution and the First Amendment as Christian conservatives as much as we want. But if we're not talking about constitutional protections for African Americans under the Fourth Amendment when it comes to stop and frisk and having to beat that policy back, or the 14th Amendment when it comes to due process, when it comes to innocent until proven guilty, or voting rights, or anything else along those lines, if we are not consistent with our conservative values from that perspective, then we are electoral frauds. We have to show the African American community that as Black Republicans, we are consistent in our conservative values and our Republican stances, including and especially for the disadvantaged, for those that are on the lower rungs of the economic ladder, and those that are oftentimes marginalized in American society, including African Americans. When we can show that we can be their champions as well, we will be able to be more viable options when it comes to the ballot box.